Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 37th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter, and we are now on episode 37. Can't believe it. I'm almost at a year now that I've been doing these, and such an honor, such a complete treat to do these kinds of podcasts and amazing guests. And I'm always super excited when I have a guest that I know and who I go way back with. So, Kari Mendoza, how are you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to see our 37 episodes. I remember when you were just getting these going, so that's pretty amazing. Good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you. I love doing this. They are a labor of love, and I think the audience appreciates them too. So I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to get right into your bio, and then I'm just going to start asking you guys some questions. Please feel free to chime in on the comments for those of you listening at home. And first off, I want to tell you guys a little bit about my friend Kari. She is the CEO and founder of Island Pet Movers, Paws Up Pet Transport. It was created after she watched her best friend struggle through the process of preparing her dog to transfer to Hawaii while her husband was deployed to Iraq. As a prior land development project manager, she knew the process of working with government agencies can be challenging and sometimes confusing, and that she could make the process easy and stress-free for her clients. So in 2009, Kari put her newly acquired MBA skills to work. And after many hours of logo and website design and a business license in hand, she created Island Pet Movers. And each year they help thousands of pets move to and from Hawaii and the Pacific, and they make it easy and stress-free. She has also been an active competitor and trainer in Schutzhund, an international dog sport, since 2003, serving as the club president and the assistant regional director for the West Coast, which includes Hawaii. This has allowed her to travel extensively with working dogs throughout the United States and on many occasions escorted dogs between the United States and Europe. Not only that, she's also a U.S. Navy veteran. I think you were a yeoman, if I remember right.
I was a yeoman, yeah.
Yep. And your dad enlisted in the Army, and you grew up as an Army child. And you remember moving to a new home, and every new home every 2 to 3 years. And while your schools and friends changed every few years, your parents made sure that pets were one constant that stayed with them after each move. And the intimate knowledge of military life and relocating with a pet, it brings a unique and heartfelt opinion to any table in relation to pet relocation around the world. Your relentless drive for success in business, love of dog training, and attention to animal behaviors, coupled with your intimate knowledge of the pet shipping industry, helps you lead a successful team of pet relocation specialists serving military families across the globe. Not only that, you're a licensed U.S. customs broker, and I remember you going through all the process for that. Specializing in
hardest thing I've ever done, I think.
Oh yeah, I remember you had to take that horrible. I wouldn't call it horrible, but it was a very hard test. I remember you telling me about it for pet traveling back to the U.S. as cargo. And since 2009, your company has moved over 40,000 pets. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm so glad we get to talk about this. And I hope we can reach a few people and maybe just get a better understanding of really what pet shipping is about, and particularly shipping pets as cargo. Because I mean, I still meet new people all of the time when they ask me what I do. So much people will step back and say, oh my God, like I would never put my pet in cargo, or I would never ship a pet. And isn't that dangerous? And so it's we're just really trying to get the better information out there. And I've been trying to do this for many years. So thanks again for having me, and we can chat about this today and chat about, how safe it really is, and how needed it is, how important of a process this is for thousands of families all across the globe, not just military families, but for us, we specialize in military again, because like you said, like as a kid, we move, right? I mean, you're up and you're gone, and you lose your friends and you lose your teachers. And those pets were always, I remember just my mom was like, no, like our pets are coming to Germany. And we were stationed in Germany twice as a kid. And, my dad was an E5 infantry in the Army. So I know we didn't have money back then. And, but it was really important. And it's not, so it's always been a cause that I've always felt really strongly about. And that's what's kept us where we are today. And some of the struggles and some of the arguments that I have with the airlines. I don't want to say arguments, but gosh, it's like a never ending thing, really trying to get them to help make these processes better for everybody. So again, thank you for bringing me on today, and hopefully we can chat about some really cool stuff and enlighten some people about the process.
Awesome. I can't wait. So I want to start off by just asking, so you're a yeoman in the Navy and you decide, okay, I'm going to get out of the Navy. What got you from being a yeoman to founding a pet relocation company? How does that happen?
Oh, honestly, is life. So when I was in the Navy, my commanding officers was really trying to push me a lot to go into ROTC and to get my commission. And and at that time I said I wanted to do it on my own time. So I got out of the Navy, but my expectation was to come back in. I wanted to be an intel officer. So I got out of the Navy. I went to school. I got my bachelor's degree. One term under 3 years. It was just go, 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 go. I didn't grades before 9/11. You just needed a degree and a prior service, and you were kind of a shoo-in. So I went to school. I moved out to Pensacola, Florida, bartended
someone
one
asked
summer
what's
on
a
the
yeoman.
beach.
Let's answer what's a yeoman real quick. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. A yeoman is it's an executive admin to the commanding officer of a squadron. So we basically do a lot of paperwork and documentation, security stuff, and we work directly for the commanding officer and the administrative part on the officer side.
Okay.
So I got out. I went to school, moved to Pensacola, and I graduated like 6 months after September 11th. And I was out in Pensacola, which is where OCS, Officer Candidate School, is. And I was living actually with my best friends, who are the same ones who moved here. So it all kind of like rounds back together in the end. But I dropped my package, and I was thinking, at the end of summer, I'll be going to Officer Candidate School, and late July, I guess, I got a letter that said, thanks, but no thanks. Your GPA is not competitive, and neither is your degree. I have a degree in history, U.S. history, foreign relations. So then I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. It was for 3 years. It wasn't, what are you going to do? So I had to, I moved to California. A friend of mine was like, offered me a position at a store, being a manager at a retail store. And which was just not my thing. Like, I don't do that so well. And then my roommate was working with a builder and said, hey, I think you'd be really great at this job. And so I moved into land development, and I worked for a home builder in California for 7 years. And like you said in the intro, I mean, I worked with planning commissions and city councils, and we're just dealing with the bureaucratic stuff of getting things approved. And all of that crashed in 2008. And I literally lost everything that I had. I had a 5-bedroom house. I sold a dog to the Las Vegas Police Department. He was a drug dog. And then I moved to Thailand for a little while, and then I was ready to be back in the States. And as I came back to the States, I was in Thailand for about 8 months. My best friend, the same one who I was living with in Pensacola, she was in California. Her husband was in Iraq. And she was just stressing. She was getting all the paperwork ready for her dog to come here, and she was just really stressed out about it. And I said, would you pay somebody to do this work for you? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I would pay somebody to do this work for me. And so I'd had a small consulting company when I left the home building industry. And so I said, well, maybe that's what I'll do. And so she said, come out to Hawaii, stay with us so you can kind of get your feet under you. And so I did. I moved out here, and I started my license. I got my license literally the next week. And she would say to me all the time, she says, gosh, you're in front of that computer all day. And I said, yeah, I'm building a business. I'm building a website. I'm getting everything going. Right. And in the beginning, I didn't even know that pet shipper was an industry. I just thought I was this really smart person, I think. And and so, after about 2.5 months, I started looking for insurances for the company. And that's when I came across the IPATA organization, which is International Pet and Animal Transportation Association, it's basically like a group of pet shippers all around the world. And as I started getting to know, which are now my colleagues, so at that time I joined the organization, and I started communicating and working with other pet shippers all across the globe. I mean, there are pet shippers almost in every country. If I need to ship a pet somewhere, I have a colleague that I pretty much personally know, and they can help me out. And so, so it was really great. And it organically grew in the beginning. And I remember you know me from way back when. And so we're in our 13th year, 13 employees, of which 10 are military spouses, which is also important to me because, again, growing up military, seeing the struggles that my mom faced as a military spouse, moving and finding companies that don't want to hire military spouses because they know they're going to be moving. That also has been something that's really important to me. as a core value of my business.
Yeah,
So
my
that's where
friend,
we are.
that's so wonderful. My friend Molly, she just said, where in California were you doing the land development stuff?
I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was building out the East Bay. So I was in San Ramon, built out all of San Ramon basically, and then out into the Central Valley, Modesto and Turlock area. I worked
Nice.
for Standard Pacific Homes when they shut our division down on a beautiful Wednesday. Life was great, and then at 3 o'clock it wasn't great. So,
Wow, wow.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and you know, it was interesting because Carrie, we met first time at the Hawaiian Humane Society at their
yeah,
military pet appreciation event. And I remember I had that little website, you know, Hawaii Military Pets, and then
yeah.
you had a business that you were starting. And I remember what you said, oh, Teresa, can I just get up in front and talk about my business? And I'm like, okay, sure. And God, I just would have had no idea, like back then, that you would grow and continue to be going and do everything that you've done. And like my friend Molly says, yeah, your services need to be shared on the military spouses pages, like on Camp Pendleton. I know a lot of families would so much appreciate what you do. And that is a very good point, Carrie, because you don't just serve Hawaii, do you?
Right. No. And so it's funny because sometimes I'll post someone we can help people because I am on a lot of Facebook pages. I mean, that's where I get a lot of my business. I do offer a lot of free advice for small stuff, but if it's bigger stuff, we're like, yeah, you can get reach out to us. And somebody said the other day, she says, well, we're not moving to Hawaii. And I said, yeah, we never changed our name. My name was a clever name because again, when I was starting this, like, I didn't even know, is it going to work? I'm pretty sure it was going to, but I didn't know what we would become. So yes, it's Island Pet Movers, but we live in Hawaii. Like, this is our home base. Why wouldn't it be, right? Like, if you could live in Hawaii, like, you would want to live here. So yeah, but we ship pets all over. So we ship pets all over from the mainland to Europe, South America, Australia, New Zealand. Australia, New Zealand used to be really big for us because we shipped a lot of animals from Hawaii to Australia and New Zealand because we're also a rabies-free country, which is kind of totally different stuff. So but yeah, Guam is really, really big for us. It has been since we started. That's been a huge challenge for us since 2017, but since the pandemic and since United stopped shipping pets altogether in March of 2020, it's been a very, very, very big challenge. So yeah, we're making it happen, and every day it's a different fire to put out and a different challenge. So
right. So I guess my first question is sort of, how did you decide who your employees would be, and how would you build this company? Like, what was some of the things that you thought about when you started getting help and things like that?
I don't even know. It's funny because I have an MBA. People say, "Oh, did you use your MBA to build your business?" I'm like, yeah, not really. I mean, some things. I think I learned about supply chain management was the biggest thing I learned getting my MBA. In the beginning, it was a girlfriend of mine, Brandy, who is still a really dear friend of mine. And I was like, girl, I need some help. Can you help me? And she's like, yeah, I can. And so she was really my first employee. And then I hired a girl, Ashton, who actually still works for me. And she's stationed in Germany actually right now. And so she's been here really the longest. So she's been off and on part-time. And work. So she's got 2 children that she's raised as she's been working with us. And a lot of my employees is the same. They are military spouses who were working for me here on island. They PCS'd off island, and then their particular role with the company, we've been able to let them move to the mainland and continue to work with us. So that's been really, really great. It's a struggle, like being a business owner and having employees is probably the most difficult thing that I deal with.
Yeah.
During COVID was even more difficult, but I have a really great core team. I hired my sister many, many years ago, and that was very scary for me because she was in a full-time job, like a real job. And I said, I need you to work full-time. And so for me, it was like, wow, I have somebody who's a single mom. She was a single mom at the time. And I'm asking her to quit her job to come work for me. And I'm like, am I going to be able to support her? And that's, so that was really kind of the first eye-opening experience as a business owner, was like, you are responsible for other people's lives. And I don't have children. So it was something that was like, wow, this is really, really, really eye-opening. And so that's how it is now, right? So several of my employees they're very much like family to me. They've been around for a long time. I've seen them go from, single with no kids to married and 2 kids, and, and kind of going through all of those struggles. And so, there's a lot of components to owning a business that I think a lot of people don't realize until you're in the thick of it and trying to figure it all out, and that, you know, what are those struggles and dealing with those struggles with your employees. And then, you know, during COVID, so when I in the land development world, like I said, on a Wednesday, I'll always remember it was September 25th because it's also my mom's birthday. But I had almost, you know, I felt like I had everything. I was 32. I had a 5-bedroom house, 2 cars, 2 dogs. Life was really good. I was making really great money. And in one day, it was, you know, it was all gone. And I remember asking my boss, who was the president of the company, well, when are they closing us down? And he said, I said, the end of the year. And he says, Friday. And so, at that time, I literally went through all of my savings, and I was like, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. But I was very young in my position that I was in. And so there were other land development project managers and trying to find stuff. So I ended up, I burned through all of my savings over like 7 months time. I ended up short selling my house. I sold everything that I owned. And then I just went to zero. And so with COVID, and having employees now, I started getting a little, and I don't want to say PTSD because I don't use that like lightly, but I was very, very much like, oh my God, what's going to happen right now? Because, you know, there were days that there were no animals flying, like nothing. And then, you know, a notification came out that the military was putting a stop order for no PCS for the next 60 days. And at the time I'm like, okay, I have 15 employees. If we don't move animals, we can't pay wages. And that for me was really, really, really scary, because I had lost it all before, right? So I said, this can't be happening again. But luckily for us, I should say, you know, like, some of my other colleagues were not as, you know, they didn't have the luxury of being on an island where we would just have to kind of figure some stuff out. But we took a dip for about 2 months. And my employees were really, they were gracious about it. I said, look, we just got to cut a couple hours here and there. And we have to have a company to come back to. I can't lose everything like I did in 2008. And so, we just kind of started building, and then we just started figuring out, okay, what can we do? And so we had to, during COVID, we were taking clients and we were shipping them on 3 different flights to get them where they needed to go. We were using cargo flights to get to Los Angeles, and we're taking another flight from Los Angeles to DC, and we were doing cross-country drives all across the country. And so we made it happen. And, you know, and again, my team, like, talk about humbling, like really truly humbling. And it like really chokes me up sometimes, but they really truly work their ass off, and they genuinely care about what we're doing. And, you know, we had clients, we would rebook their flight 9 times. Because flights canceled. We're on our way to the airport. And we've got a van full of animals. Flight canceled. You know, I mean, these airlines are not flying five people on the planes. And so, a little bit of perspective. Pre-COVID, we had almost 50 flights a day on United Airlines alone that we could fly pets in and out of here on. Once COVID hit, there were 0. Like, we couldn't use United at all. We still can't use United today. The number of passengers that were coming in here on a daily basis were, I think it was like 150,000 people a day, or 35,000. I should know those numbers, but I don't. But it basically went from what we were seeing in a day to like 4,000 a month. You know, less than what we were seeing in, you know, in 12 hours a day, to 4,000 people a month. So the number of aircraft that were going, it was just really, really, really crazy. But, you know, my team hung in there, and, you know, and it was difficult. We took a lot of, stress and anger from clients, you know, and it was really hard. And we were finding a lot of people were angry and frustrated at the process, and they were taking it out on, you know, on the staff, to where I just sent an email to everybody saying, look, we get it. We're all just as frustrated, but remember, like, we are, you know, we're trying to help you, and we just need everybody to please be kind.
Everything that I'm hearing, Carrie, is leadership. I mean, everything. Like, and that's the thing, like, is in such short supply in this world, is people who genuinely care and work their butts off. And then people just want to work for those people, you know, like, that's what I'm hearing from you, is that
I appreciate that. I'm not the easiest person to work with. I will tell you that. I mean, I have had plenty of my share of employees who are like, peace out, lady. I can't work with you.
Well, you're intense.
But my expectations are high, right? And my expectations are high. towards the airlines, right? So when I'm working with the airlines, they know that if I'm calling them, there's a valid reason of why we're calling. There's a valid reason of why we're asking for exceptions to policy. Exceptions to policy is like my big thing. Even when I was in the Navy, I was always like walking a fine line. My chief used to say, if you weren't such a damn good yeoman, you would be out of the Navy, because everything was like, well, why this? Or why is it no? And that's with the airlines now. It's like, why no? Tell me why. And it's because they don't want to deal with the backlash from the public on certain issues that things have happened. And so what I've been trying to do, and I was really actually making some headway with United prior to COVID, is just how can we make the industry a better industry? How do we make it a safer industry? And convincing the airlines that we need you. Like, we genuinely, absolutely need you. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people kind of don't pay attention to when it comes to the airlines, is that the airlines are not pet shippers. The airlines are people movers, and they care about moving people on the airline. Pets are a very, very, very small piece of what they do. And it's such a small piece that when they stop shipping pets, the financial implication to them is zero. They're just like, it's better because it's less of a headache that they have to deal with if something does happen. If you're shipping a box of books or vaccines or whatever it is, and it's delayed 4 hours, you don't have somebody screaming on the other side, what did you do to my pet? Why is the flight delayed? What do you mean there's a thunderstorm in Texas and you can't fly my pet? I mean, like, really valid things that upset people. And so just trying to get the airline to say, from a honestly, from a humanitarian side of things, is we need you guys. Like, we genuinely need to be able to utilize your services to move animals all across the globe.
We do need the airlines. And you bring up a really great point, and something I'm very, very curious about. Do you think there'll ever be a day that we will have dedicated airlines or dedicated airplanes that can ship pets across the country? Because you see now we even have chartered jets. Like, people are so desperate to move their pets, they will do what's called like an Uber rideshare program, where you pay $7,000, you partner with 10 other people on Facebook, and you rent a private jet. That is because of some of the same, and we're going to talk about this, like the snub-nosed breed or the dangerous dog restrictions. And those restrictions are making people not want to use the airlines. So what is your thoughts about one day the industry adopting a model where they use their own aircraft?
So it would be amazing. I think the problem is the financial feasibility of it. I think is it doesn't quite work. And there was an airline, I believe it was called like Pet Airways or Pet something, and they had a fairly small plane. It's really expensive to fly planes. Like, really, really, really expensive. I don't know if people realize how expensive it is. And not only that, so it's not just the aircraft and the fuel and the maintenance of the plane. I mean, to fly a plane, on a daily basis back and forth to Guam, for example, they have to have like 25 pilots on staff, right? And so you got pilots that are flying like big planes, and these guys aren't working for minimum wage, right? So you've got pilots and all of this stuff. So it's very, very, very expensive. And again, pet shipping it's a very niche organization. Like, it's very, very, very small until you're in an arena like we are, where we see military that are constantly moving. So for me, pet shipping seems like it's huge, right? But when you go to Chicago, or you go to the the board of directors for the airlines, they're like, who's moving animals? Are there people really truly moving animals? I charter a plane, an entire 757 aircraft between here and Guam, and we've been doing that now for fully chartering it since maybe about a year and a half. Fully chartering, we do it every 8 to 10 weeks, depending, because and the price has just gone up again. But it's over $140,000 that we have to rent this plane.
Whoa!
So, yes, and then if you can imagine. Right, you've got to fill that. And you can't put 1,000 animals on the plane, because first of all, there's not 1,000 animals. Second of all, you move all those 1,000 animals, and then and then we're going from like one island to another island, And so we have the logistics. We've got to get all those animals from wherever they're coming from. And we've had pets that are coming from Japan, from Asia, South America, again, coming from Europe, that all come together here in Honolulu. And then we gather them together and we put them on a plane and then we fly them to Guam. And say they come out of Guam and we've got, all of these animals. Normally out of Guam, we'll have almost 50 to 60 pets that come out of here. They land here, and then we have the logistics of there's only so many planes leaving Hawaii that we've got to get them, dispersed from wherever it is that they're going. So can it be, could it be done? I mean, maybe if somebody was super freaking wealthy and philanthropist and they're like, yeah, let's start this airline and doesn't really care about money. But on the financial side of things,
they wouldn't make enough money to make it worth it.
I just don't. And I think that Pet Airways, they couldn't make it work. It was a fairly small plane, and they had fixed kennels in the aircraft itself. So that in itself created a problem, because we could get a pet from Miami to Los Angeles. They only had certain routes. I think they were like Miami to LA, JFK to LA, and maybe one other place. So you have very fixed routes. And you couldn't use your own kennel. So if we got a pet to Miami, from Miami to Los Angeles, then all of a sudden I have to go find somebody to pick them up at the airport, go buy a crate or bring a crate with them to put them on another plane to where it is that they're going. So it made things like really, really difficult to I think keep that going where it made financial sense. And particularly, like I said, as a whole, I think more likely is going to be if to keep pet shipping going as it is to prepare people and just really put the knowledge out there about how safe the industry is. And I think that's, for me, is one of my most frustrating things, is that the number of people who just don't understand truly how safe pet shipping is. And people are like, oh, United killed this many animals. I'm like, no, United didn't kill this many animals. There were animals that had issues for whatever it was. There are certain things that are reported to the Department of Transportation, but not everything is reported to them. But the numbers, right? The percentage of bad things that happen, it's less than 1%. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying that absolves the airlines of any type of responsibility if there are any issues that are their responsibility. But it just, sometimes life happens. And, we don't fault veterinary clinics when a pet doesn't make it out of surgery for spaying and neuters, general surgeries. And the number of pets that are, having issues in vet clinics versus the number of pets, and just by the percentage, it's huge. But we would never go to a vet clinic and say, stop spaying and neutering pets, stop giving dental cleanings, because you could potentially kill an animal. And but that's what's been happening in the airline industry, is that people
aren't educated about pet transport.
And that's just it, right? So people. And again, it's like the keyboard warriors. And so you see the stuff that happens in the media, and then all of a sudden you've got, the Today Show is talking about this, and you've got thousands and thousands of comments of people saying, it's so cruel to ship an animal. You should never ship an animal. And you have to keep in mind, again, like you and I coming from the military side, like moving for us is like, that's what we do. But the general people, like, you may never leave the street you lived on, let alone, move a cat 15,000 miles away, from Africa to wherever it is you're going. So they don't even understand the concept, and they don't understand what, how detrimental it is on people and on families when they do have to leave a pet behind. And so, the education, and I wish this is something that the military really, I get it. I mean, again, since I was a kid, they don't pay for pets. And I think that's another misconception, that if you're not military, and particularly the airlines, they just assume that the military covers costs of moving animals. So they're like, oh, if it's costs more money, it's not something that they're super concerned about. They think it's being covered.
And there's military people who do give up their pets because it costs something like $5,000 to move a pet, especially or more internationally. And what I want to address with you now is cargo versus bringing an animal on the plane. So, as we explore, my husband and I, making Jada a service dog so that we can get her into England, because I'm going to be traveling internationally. One concern, especially my husband, and I hope he's listening to this part right now, and if he's not, I'm going to play it for him later. I even told him about this podcast. What is your feelings about having an animal on the plane versus putting an animal in cargo?
I mean, it's different. Obviously, anytime an animal can be with you, then less things can go wrong. That doesn't mean that they won't go wrong. Which is why, matter of fact, like Delta stopped allowing, they were a really big force on the service dog, right? The emotional support dog. But there was a really big correlation to, and this is my opinion, and I brought this up at a conference, and the Delta guy just kind of gave me a look, because he says, since 2015, we have had a 400% increase in emotional support animals. And we have to put, we need to figure this out. And I said to him, I said, do you understand that in 2015, that's when you banned more than 30 breeds of animals and you will no longer move them?
Right.
And so people will find a way, right? I mean,
Yep.
they will find a way, because no is not acceptable to many families. And so that's what created, it didn't create this emotional support animal, but that movement really started gaining a lot of traction in 2015. And then finally the airlines were able to get that kind of squashed, because we were seeing people who have, this is my emotional support Chihuahua or my Peacock. And, but there was an incident on Delta where a pit bull bit somebody on the airplane. And so now again, the airline is liable for that, right? So not the pet owner, but the airline, because the airline allowed that animal on the plane. Their hands are tied though. They can't say no, because it was like this, Disabilities Act thing. So it was a struggle. So again, it came back to, where should pets properly fly? How should they fly? What's the safest, for everybody, and safe for the industry in general, because that incident caused a huge drama. There are people who genuinely have service animals who need their service animals. There are military veterans with legit hardcore PTSD who need their dogs to function. And because there were so many people taking advantage of these situations, now it's a struggle for them. And now they're being questioned. Is this truly a service dog? And so when it comes, when I tell people, like, you want to move your animal the safest way that is possible. And of course, if a pet is with you, it's going to be safer. But is it if they're not used to being in those environments? Are they used to being in a confined space for long periods of time? It's a 1 hour flight. That's maybe not something, but you're flying 7-8 hours, and a pet is in a space that's this big in front of you, and that pet is a 90-pound German Shepherd. Are they used to that scenario? And that's the thing with service animals, are trained to go through that. As they're going through these academies and they're learning to be with their people, they are trained to be in small spaces, in restaurants and in hotels and in planes and trains and riding on a bus. And so when you have a pet that's not what they're trained to do, but they're trained to be in their crate, and that crate is their safe space and their safe haven, it's, to me, and I've seen this, it's more comfortable for a pet to be in an area that is their small space. They are confined. Dogs particularly are denning animals by nature, so they love their kennels once they're used to being in their kennel. And you see this, dogs often will, scooch up next to a wall. You'll see a dog in the corner of your couch, or they're laying on their back in the corner of a wall. And that's just because that's what makes them feel comfortable. Big spaces for dogs, it doesn't make them feel comfortable. Same with cats. Cats they're not wanting to be in a big open space where they can see everything that's going on. If they can be in a small confined space for them for that travel, they're safe, and they're not going to injure somebody else, which in the end can injure the industry as a whole. And yeah,
absolutely. So, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I would say, so for me, I have people a lot of times who say, I want to take my pet in cabin, and a lot, so you have to remember the space that you can take your pet in cabin, if it's not flying as a service dog, it has to fit under the seat in front of you. And so that's 11 inches. Okay, so 11 inches, pretty small. And that means that your pet is going to be laying down. They're not going to be able to stand up and turn around and stretch their legs. Again, 8 or 9 hours on a long flight. Yeah, there are flights that are even longer than that. And they have to stay under that space. And so if your pet is not used to that, if you're not somebody who takes their animals with them everywhere and are constantly getting them used to being around different noises and different people and different sounds, that is going to cause more stress to your pet, because they also can see you and they're like, why are you not letting me out of this bag? Why are you squishing me under the seat? Versus being able to be in a properly fitted crate where they can actually lay down, turn around. I always joke, because the 700 series kennel It's bigger than, passenger seats. So I said, pets are required to have more comfortable space than humans are, right? I think it's like 23 inches is what the seat requirement is for passengers on an aircraft. But, like a dog crate, a 700 series dog crate is 48 inches, so it's a lot more comfort than people give them credit for, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And your sound's kind of coming in and out a little bit, but I think we're okay. I don't know if you hit something. Yeah, it's okay. But what I was going to ask is what is it that a lot of people don't understand too, like the size of the crate and why it has to be a certain size when you ship an animal in a crate. Can you explain that?
So there are rules that are created. So there's a live animal regulation, which is from IATA, and in that live animal regulation, it talks about proper fitting in a crate. You to be able to turn around and lay down and stand up and not touch the top. And I think, some of this evolved from people who were trying to save some money, and they just started to put a German Shepherd in a crate that we would normally put like a beagle in. Oh, he fits in there. I can show you pictures of my dog. Yeah, she fits in there, but that's not going to be comfortable, and it's not going to be the humane way that we're going to move those animals. So you want them to have a proper amount of space, but it's more particular important also for like the snub-nosed pets, and we were chatting about that, is that there are mitigating things that we feel, and that the industry has said, okay, let's try to do these extra things to mitigate any circumstance we can to see about having less incidents with snub-nosed pets. And so when you have a crate that is one size like bigger than that snub-nosed pet, and they're able to have a little bit more breathing room and being able to kind of move around a little bit, maybe not have as much stress, that's really a big thing. And so the hard thing, again, with some of the snub-nosed pets is that some of these breeds are just predispositioned to breathing problems, regardless of if it's 75 degrees outside, if it's 50 degrees outside, or if it's 90 degrees outside. Right. And that's been one of the problems that we're fighting, and it's very, very prominent in the English and French bulldogs. Mostly English is where we see it a lot, but these dogs can't breathe. They take a 10-minute walk down the street, and they have just major problems from the hereditary and the breeding that they have. So that's what was happening. So the airline itself maybe didn't have any issues there, no mishandling, but if the pet starts getting stress, and it could be stress for many things, it not being kennel trained, or being away from their family, or being high anxiety, and then something happens to that animal, and it happens to that animal when it's in the care of the airline is who's going to take that the beating from the general public, and not just from the pet owner, but again from everybody else who jumps on the bandwagon and says you guys should never ship animals ever again. But what's frustrating from the industry standpoint is that often there are errors that are on the pet owner side, and the airline can't go and say, but you didn't do X, Y, and Z for the safety of your pet, because then that would make them look like, that they're a complete, heartless company. And that I think is what has kind of got us where we are today in some of the circumstances. Whereas like for me, I've said to them, I said, your PR department sucks, because your PR department has allowed the public to think that because you just say nothing. And so the public can create all these stories that they want. They make it all up, and then you say nothing. And so that must be what it is. Instead of coming out and saying, hold on a minute. This is what really happened. This animal had an enlarged heart. It had had cancer all across its liver. And unfortunately, it passed while it was in our care. And we're devastated for the family. And we know that this really, really sucks, but we genuinely didn't do anything wrong. And so that's been what's really, really frustrating to see, is that you can't go back to the owners. I mean, and again, you see pets that I'll see where people will say, I have a 30-pound French bulldog, and I'm going to fly him in cabin because that's the only way I can fly my pet. And they're right to an extent. And it sucks that that's the only way to fly a pet. But a 30-pound French bulldog doesn't fit in 11 inches under the seat of a plane. But people will try. And again, they will try because there are no other options for them. And people are like, I'm not going to leave my animal, so I will put this pet in this bag. I'm going to shove it under the seat, and hopefully the dog doesn't have problems. Just a couple months ago, Delta Airlines it was in like in one of the news medias that the flight attendant put an oxygen bag over a pug. And again, it's because that pug, this is in cabin. So it doesn't mean that just because a pet is in cabin with you, doesn't mean that nothing is going to happen. So the dog is in a small bag, is having breathing problems. Luckily, the flight attendant was like, okay, let me administer some oxygen to this dog, and the dog was fine. Had that dog been in a proper crate, big enough space to move around, and under the belly of the plane, which always 100% is always pressurized and climate controlled, would that pet have had those issues? I don't know. Would that pet have had the issues when it was sitting at home? I don't know. But having it in the plane didn't make it any safer for that animal just because it was in the cabin of the plane.
What you're telling me, Carrie, is that the way that the airlines have decided to deal with snub-nosed animals is not based on any science whatsoever. There's no correlation between these summer temperature months and all of these breeds. Because I will say too, a lot of people don't understand that the snub-nosed is not just English bulldogs or French bulldogs. It's boxers. They have blanketed any animal that I'm impacted by this issue. And to know that there wasn't an exact correlation between these summer months and these temperatures and these breathing problems, that really disturbed me when I found that out.
Well, I think basically what happened was they obviously did some internal studies, and they said, okay, of the animals that have had issues, what are the percentage of the animals that have had issues? And the breeds are listed. I mean, you can go to the Department of Transportation, you can see the breed list, and the higher percentage were those of bulldogs. That was the higher percentage. But what's interesting is that they'll put cats, for example, on the list. There's, for some reason, there's like 4 different breeds of cats, and Himalayans and Persians are one of those snub-nosed, fat, flat-faced cats. But on the Department of Transportation website, and for the instances of cat deaths due to airlines, there's not one snub-nosed cat has died in custody of the airline. And so it's frustrating that that they just came in and said, no, we're just not going to ship any of it. And again, it comes from the AVMA, which is the American Veterinary Medical Association. They said, okay, these animals are classified as brachycephalic, snub-nosed, and any mix or or combination thereof of these breeds. And so the AVMA is who created this list, and then without really taking consideration of all of those animals that are on that list and where they fall on that list, the airlines just said, okay, if they're classified as brachycephalic, we're not going to take them. And there are animals that are much more prone to overheating. And again, it really comes down to some of these, I don't want to say like designer breeds, but bred dogs that are, they're very expensive. And so people are just breeding and breeding and breeding. And some there are ethically breeding, on the bulldog side, if that's a thing, but not all. And so the airlines just said, you know what, we don't want to take the liability. We don't know how that dog was bred. We don't know. Did they have the surgery? Have you had surgery? I mean, most people don't pay for the extra like palate surgeries for their pets and airway opening for bulldogs, which is really important for some of these dogs. Like I said, they have issues at home. And so as a whole, they just said, our hands are off. We just don't want to deal with it because, as I said earlier, no is easy, right? Yeah. No is much easier than how do we fix this? And so for me, I spent a lot of time back and forth, particularly at United Airlines. So prior to 2017, United took snub-nosed pets. The only pets that they didn't take were bulldogs, French and English bulldogs. They would take American bulldogs. And they did for many, 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 many years. They had a certain embargo during the summer months where they wouldn't take a couple of the snub-nosed breeds. But if it was mixes of, particularly like pit bulls and pit bull mixes, which if you've ever been to Hawaii and you go to the Humane Society, that's 90% of the pets that you're adopting out of there. And so they were taking them. But what happened was, they had the incident with the French bulldog on the plane going in the cabin, up in the top of the plane, and that dog died again, which was not even a pet safe issue. It wasn't a cargo issue. 2 separate pieces of the airline, but the pet shipping side, the pet safe is who took the beating for that from the public. Because again, the public was like, you shouldn't be allowed to ship animals. And so the airlines finally just said, okay, you don't want us to ship animals, we won't.
Yeah,
Because
it's worth it for them because they're not the ones that are suffering. It's the pet owners who want to keep their pets and want to have this animal with them, who are the ones who are honestly the victims of this issue.
Yeah.
A lot of it, like you said, I really believe is a lack of education, and that's what this podcast today is about educating people about, snub-nosed animals and about pet shipping and how safe pet shipping can be if it's done properly, and ways in which people can work with you guys. I have another question that I'm just personally curious about. Why is it that, and my husband would love that I'm asking this question, because he's the skeptic in the room, well, not in this room, but in my head. Why is it that when you ship a pet, you have to, and you want to ship it overseas, like I do, why do I have to work with you versus, and I want to put my animal in cargo. Why do I have to hire a pet shipper company instead of just doing all the paperwork myself?
So sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And that really comes down to airline specific. So American Airlines, for example, if you're military on orders, they'll let you ship your pet. They don't take snub-nosed pets though. So, it's kind of a thing. So, but really what it comes down to is that the airlines, again, they're not pet shippers. That is not their lane, right? That's not their core competency. They move people and they're moving freight, but pets are not people and they're not freight, right? They're specialized freight. And so they've started to realize that pet shippers bring a tremendous value to the airline in the sense that we know a whole lot more than their team knows, because our team is a constant team and this is all that we do. We only ship animals, right? So they reach out to us and many pet shippers across the globe and ask us for guidance and ask us for help in getting them they're building upon and working on their own pet safe issues as well. Their programs that they have, but the value that pet shippers bring, like we bring the knowledge, and not only that, but like we're kind of like that intermediary, and we are policing the public. So excuse me. So again, when the airline says to Mrs. Smith, no, you can't, your dog doesn't fit in that. And Mrs. Smith is like, I'm at cargo and they won't let me fly my dog. And she's on social media and she's throwing a fit. And the airline is like, oh my God, everything is like PR. Whereas like for us, we're like, no, we won't ship you. So it's very, for me, it's very black and white. I get it. You don't want to pay to go in the higher crate costs. It sucks. I understand. However, for the safety of your dog, this is what we have to do. And it's you either do this or you don't, or we can't move your animal. And safety of the pet for us is 100% always. I tell people all the time, like we will inconvenience pet owners all day long for what's the most safe, directest route to ship an animal. And the airlines have started to realize, over the last probably like 6 to 8 years. And that's a lot of help with the IPATA organization. I mean, there's the leadership in the IPATA has really done a great job of trying to get in front of the airlines and saying, hey, this is what IPATA shippers bring to the table. So not every shipper is IPATA. And that doesn't mean if they're not IPATA that they're not a good shipper. Some choose not to be part of IPATA for whatever reasons. There's some political stuff that's going on in there. But the thing with IPATA is that, it does say, they can't police pet shippers, but they can say, hey, this pet shipper they are licensed. They are following the proper procedures that they're supposed to be following. They're supposed to be following the live animal regulations. If they're not, there are procedures through ethics committees and whatnot to have somebody removed from that, to try to keep the organization itself and keep pet shipping in a safe space, to keep animals moving all across the globe. So a lot of airlines finally are realizing that pet shippers bring a lot of value to the table and that this is our core competency and this is what we do. And so when we're coming to them, I mean, I know my airlines here in Honolulu, they know, they're like, man, when you guys come, your paperwork is in order, your crates are in order. We're not fighting with you to say, hey, that dog doesn't fit in the kennel. And so we make their lives a lot more, a lot easier to get things done. But again, it comes back to the safety of the pet. And I think a lot of airlines are realizing that when you're using a pet shipper, those steps have all been done. The number of steps that we require from our clients to ship an animal, it's pretty daunting. And we've had people complain about it. Like, this is ridiculous. Just put my pet on a plane. But again, it comes down to, like, we genuinely are trying to make sure that your pet is safe. I know it might seem like a lot of steps, whereas before you could just call and you talk to somebody in Manila and they book your flight. But again, they're not monitoring, like, what is the breed of the pet? What is your layover looking like? How long is it? I mean, if I have an airline might say that if you want to fly to a small airport in Kentucky, and if the plane can accommodate it, they may say, yeah, we'll fly the pet there. But the pet would have a 19-hour layover perhaps in Houston because of the limited flights that are going to go there. So it's like a 19-hour layover for the pet, or we're going to drive 6 hours of ground transport. And that's something that where we look at the big picture and we say to the owner, like, we could put your pet, but it's less stress if you just pick up at this destination and you just drive the rest of the way home, rather than making your pet kennel somewhere for the next 18 hours or 17 hours and then getting another plane and then flying again. So again, and not every airline requires a pet shipper. And I've actually been an advocate of not requiring pet shippers, surprisingly, because I think people should have a choice. They should be able to choose. And, ever since I started my company, people came to us because they choose to use our service. They choose to have that stress kind of removed from them and let us handle what it is that we do. And so I don't particularly like the model of you have to use a pet shipper, but I will say, if it comes down to all or none, and it's like no pets at all or only through pet shippers, then absolutely, I'm going to say, okay, well, let's go with pet shippers. Yeah.
And you have to wonder that if we were to choose a model with the airlines where only pet shippers were allowed to ship pets, you have to wonder if maybe we would open up some of these restrictions. Like, maybe there wouldn't be snub-nosed restrictions. Maybe some of these.
What's frustrating about that is that pre-COVID, so middle of February of 2020, I was actually in Chicago. So United Airlines had they have a meeting, a global meeting, and it was headquartered in Chicago. I flew out there for this meeting. So I had a beautiful lunch with Manu Jacobs, who's a director of, he handles like all of the specialty cargo. And I sat with him, and I, again, just I don't believe in no. And so I'm constantly like sending information to United, like, look at these animals, like, look at the statistics, look at what we can do, look at how pet shippers can help you. And we went through and we sat and we had a great lunch, like over 3.5 hours. And I went through, with my laptop, I showed him our processes, I showed him our procedures. And at that time I said, look, bring back, what can we do to get United to bring back shipping these snub-nosed pets and utilizing a pet shipper for that? We can make this safer.
Yeah, make it a restriction, like only pet shippers. Yep.
And so, and I said, if we can bring it back, let's, and maybe it's just a handful of shippers that you trust and that you value as a partner. And so that was on a Wednesday. I was supposed to have a meeting with Jan Krems, who's the president of United Cargo. Friday morning, we're supposed to have a breakfast. And Thursday, he calls me and he sends me a text. He's like, hey, like, there's this craziness going on with COVID. Like, we're going to have to reschedule this. We can reschedule this meeting. I said, yeah, no problem. I'll come back out in a couple of months. And little did I know that, like, that drama that week was all the planes from China were all canceling. And, it just ended up being this crazy thing. And then, unfortunately, all of that work that I really felt we were building on, and I thought like we were actually going to get somewhere, it all just came crashing down and completely unraveled. And it's frustrating because, again, that's time that me and my staff have really worked on to try to help get this back on track and try to ship a lot of these animals. Because, the snub-nosed breeds, it's more than 30 breeds of dogs that fall under the brachycephalic. But the issue is it can't be a mix of, right? So, you see people that, oh, my dog's a Shih Tzu mix. I'm like, okay, well, let me see a picture of your dog. And it's not. It looks like a poodle, but it is technically a Shih Tzu mix. And so now that pet can't fly on, any of the U.S. carriers. All of the U.S. carriers except Hawaiian Airlines have banned snub-nosed animals. So the only way to move them right now, like in and out of Guam and out of Honolulu, are via charters. And luckily there are international carriers who are still allowing this, that are allowing the snub-nosed pets. But Lufthansa, instead of just completely banning it, they said for snub-nosed pets, you've got to go through a shipper.
Yep.
And so again, it's something that it's better than nothing. right? It's better than nothing. And you will have shippers who they're just genuinely trying to make sure that your pet is safe and that they're not, they're not being put in a kennel that's too small, or they're not on like crazy major layovers. I have clients that will say, well, I'm on 3 different flights. Why can't my pet be on the planes with me? It's like, no, it doesn't work like that with animals. Like, we want to get them there as direct as possible, as safe as possible. And that's not always the same route that humans are taking.
This is fascinating. Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like, I feel like there are so many people who just do not understand what goes into shipping an animal on an airline where animals are not the priority. I mean, that's really what you guys are up against. You're up against basically trying to convince an airline who has no incentive other than nasty PR.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's just it, right? It's one incident. And that's what's frustrating, because they're these huge organizations and they have one incident. And again, it's less than 1%. So they'll ship 500,000 animals in a year, 500,000 animals in a year, and they'll have 3 incidents. And you don't necessarily know what that incident is. So if an animal escapes from its crate, if it breaks out of its crate on the runway and gets run over by a vehicle that's towing a plane or something,
right,
that animal will be reported to the Department of Transportation as it died on United Airlines or on American Airlines, whatever airline it is, even though the airline had no negligence in that. The pet has broken out of its crate. The pet has, they open the doors and the dog is, running around the plane of the cargo, and because they chewed out of their crate. Those types of incidents, the public doesn't know. And again, from a PR standpoint, the airlines are not coming out and saying, well, this is really what happened. And to me, like I said, it's frustrating because I think they should. I was like, no, look, this is really what happened, right? The cat that died, it's sad, but it was 18. The cat was 18 years old. They don't say that. You don't know that that's what's happening. And so it just makes it where, like I said, people, again, I tell them what I do and they're like, oh my God, like I would never ship my animal. I've shipped my own dogs multiple times on cargo. I have no problem knowing I'm going to put my dog in a crate. She's properly crate trained. She's going to do just fine. And I'm going to pick her up in Florida when we get to Florida, and we're going to hang out, and then we're going to come back home. Right. And so, I don't want to take my dog in cabin because my dog loves everybody and she wants to be climbing on everybody and visiting everybody. And I just want her to be chilled out so I can enjoy my flight. She can enjoy her flight in her crate. And then we kind of go on. But again, it just comes back to public perception of flying pets in cargo. And what's frustrating, Teresa, is the number of veterinarians who have no idea, none, about pet shipping, yet will voice their opinion to their customers. Oh, your dog is going to die in cargo. I would never ship a dog in cargo. And I say to them, like, why? They don't even know. And I will argue this with vets. I've had vets who are saying, nope, this animal is not fit to fly. They can't fly cargo. And I said, well, why? Well, they have, a heart murmur. Okay, so can they drive? Can they drive down the street? Can they be in a confined space for 30 hours driving across the country? Well, yeah, they can. Okay, but so why is flying in an aircraft?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Why is that more stressful? It's not. It's less stressful. You're getting them there in 9 hours instead of 30 hours driving across country. And even just the concept of what happens on the aircraft. Like, we talk with veterinarians all the time regarding letters of acclimation, because in the winter, the USDA, the standard number is 45 degrees, but the USDA does allow for periods of transport to go down to 20 degrees if a veterinarian feels that the pet is acclimated to be in those temperatures. And the number of veterinarians that I will argue that an animal can't go under 45 degrees, it's crazy. I had a vet here in Hawaii, 2 huskies. And she says, no, they can't be under 45 degrees. And I said, they're huskies. They live in the snow. Like, they dig out of the snow. No, cannot. And it's just for periods of transport, right? So it's periods of transport mean from coming off of the aircraft and being on whatever type of service it is that the airline is using, if it's a baggage cart or if it's a van, whatever it is, to get them to the cargo facility. But they don't understand that because it's not what they do. So again, it comes back to the knowledge of the industry and the perception of the industry. And if an animal in New York City can go for a walk and go pee in Central Park where it's snowing and freezing cold, they can be in their crate, which is confined and protected from the elements, in order to get on and off of a plane. But even that, I have vets who will say, well, doesn't that mean that they can be at 20 degrees in the airplane for a 9-hour flight? And it's like, no, that's not what that means. Like, the planes are pressurized, they're climate controlled. And I'll have people all the time, they'll say, I want to use this airline because they have pressurized and climate controlled planes. And I say, if an airline is taking pets, their aircraft is pressurized and climate controlled. And which is why on some airlines, their particular aircraft, if they don't have those in that particular type of plane, they can't take pets. Delta's 767, which is one of their long haul flights, they at one time they realized that the climate control didn't work because of the way that their seats were configured. And so they said, no more pets, we can't fly, and so you fly people on that plane all day long. It's a big plane. And, American Airlines on their Airbuses, they have one type of Airbus that can take live animals, but all the rest of their Airbuses, because it's not configured properly. So again, that information of that general knowledge to that pet shipping, they are in a space that is climate controlled and, properly heated, it's a misconception. A lot of people think that it's going to be freezing on the plane. I had a client the other day, she says, my friend who's a pilot said that the temperature is kept at 40 degrees for the plane. And I said, no, that's not true. You can go and I think mostly it's like around 65. I think it varies from airline to airline, but I was flying one time, some clients' dogs from Honolulu to JFK. And the pilot came, I told him, I said, hey, I've got some pets. And he came out and he says, what temperature would your pets be most comfortable at?
Wow.
And I said, I don't know. I said, how about 68? 68. So he goes, done. We'll put it at 68. So, there's a lot more controls that airlines have that, again, the public just doesn't understand that they have. And the instances with animals, like with any types of mistakes or whatnot, it does tend to come from handling, which, again, like I said, as a shipper, we want to limit the number of handling. We want to try to mitigate as many circumstances as we can. So if that's saying we're going to do one flight, one and done, which is something we've asked some of the airlines for. It's like, okay, if we ship snub-nosed or mixes of those, what if we don't have any connections? What if we just do point A to point B? Yeah. That's it. Just let me get, from Japan to San Francisco, and then we'll drive them wherever we need to go. Just let me get where we need to go. And that's just what we've been really trying to do.
Because this is important. There's 30 breeds, including my own, who need to fly, and they need these airlines, and they need these services. And what you're doing is really important work, and it reaffirms why animal knowledge is such a huge part of my work, not only with you, but with puppy mills, with anything to deal with animal behavior. I had a woman on who was protesting, the pony rides, and it's still an animal knowledge issue of whether or not a pony can be out for this much of time and not be out, never. I mean, but this comes down to animal husbandry and what an animal needs in order to thrive. And there's so little knowledge from the general public because we, like you said earlier in our conversation, people humanize animals, and they think that an animal needs the same things that a person needs. And it's a completely different thing. And you need to have animal behaviorists who understand what is safe for the animal. So I want to close out here, but I know that we've covered so much ground. But and it's been an amazing conversation, and I've learned a lot just by listening to you. In fact, we do have a couple comments. Let me try to bring those in real quick. My mouse cooperates. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Steve Okino says, I'm not military, but I've used island pet movers several times, starting in 2002, most recently during COVID for personal moves. Grateful that they persevered through difficult times.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes. So, and then of course, my buddy Brian, he was just saying, moving pets costs anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000, and that's on the low end. And it's true. It is very expensive. But moving on, I think what is it that you hope? I think that's a good question to kind of close it out. What is it that you hope that the industry, like, where do you want to see the industry move in terms of the airlines, in terms of the general public? What kind of movement would you want to see?
I mean, I think for me, it's having a safe industry, and we're working towards that. Having a safe industry where people are not as fearful to move their animals because there are processes and procedures in place, and and airlines that know that their product is a great product. Again, United Airlines, their Pet Safe program was emulated by many, many airlines all around. It was a really great program, and it's sad. It breaks my heart that that program is completely shut down. They're only shipping animals to and from Guam, only military, on orders. You have to be on the plane, and your pet and crate have to be less than 99 pounds. Other than that, there's nothing. And that was a phenomenal program. But I wish that just more people would understand that it's needed, right? You have an animal that has to fly in a crate for 9 hours and they get where they're going, or you have to give them to the Humane Society, or you have to give them to another family because they can't go where their people are going. And that could be, again, not just military moving or have to move or whatever it is. And these animals they're so important to people's lives. And on the military readiness side of things, I think it's so important. When your spouse is being deployed to wherever it is, for some families and wives and kids, I mean, that animal is everything. It's everything when they don't have their spouse. And when you say, sorry, we can't take your pet because of X, Y, or Z, it's a Great Dane and it can't fit on this plane, or it's $9,000 to move it from Asia back to the United States, the readiness factor comes into play, because it is tearing apart human emotions of people, like in our heart. I mean, that animal is part of our family. And so I would love to see the industry really step back from these PR policies and this blanket policy, really no snub-nosed animals, and we're not going to take them based on this, that, or another, and just really genuinely look at, hey, the safety of this, we know how safe it is, and how do we educate the public in knowing how safe it is. And I said to them, and I say this all the time, and I know we're wrapping up our time, but this is my thing. We know that smoking cigarettes is really bad for you. We know that it kills people. If you're in Australia and you buy a pack of cigarettes, it's got nasty pictures and everything all over these packets, but people will still choose to smoke cigarettes. People still choose to do what they want to do. And for me, I wish that the airline industry would say, hey, you know what? You don't want to ship your dog and you think it's bad, great. You don't ship your pet. However, we know that we are able to move animals fairly safely 99.7% of the time. And we have clients and families who want to move their animals, who need to move their animals. And so we're going to allow them to do that. That's what I wish the airlines would say. I wish they would say, you don't get to decide, you can decide for yourself. But those of us that need us, they need our service, they need to keep their family together, we're going to allow that. That's what I wish would happen.
Yes. And I think that in time we will get there.
I'm hoping.
I do. I'm an optimist when it comes to these things, because I see so much in terms of progress and in terms of just the animal movement, the animal welfare movement. It constantly is getting a little bit better with time. And the more people who understand how safe shipping pets can be and how much of a better alternative it is to ship a pet versus dumping it off at a humane society. I mean,
absolutely.
And honestly, like it is not only a readiness issue between like military who don't want to deal with moving their pets and then the way it breaks up a family, but it's also a stain on the community when military members leave pets behind. And as we know in Hawaii, sometimes the military gets a very, very bad rap for
Guam too. I mean, again, and there are places, Palau, for example, unless you hire a private plane, you cannot get animals out of there. Cannot get out of there, because the only airline that's servicing that right now is United Airlines. So it's sad because the general public has allowed this really great program to be shut down because of the lack of knowledge about how safe the programs really are, how safe the industry really is, and again, how needed it genuinely, truly, really, really is.
And I feel like you guys really need a congressional advocate one day, like somebody.
I think that we have tried. There are people that are at the congressional level. For me, I've said this before. If an airline takes government money to move people, they should be required to take all of their belongings, which include their animals as well.
I agree. Great. But maybe Mr. I mean, I don't want to just name drop, but I don't know if you know Bob McDermott. He's a friend of mine, and he is there in Hawaii. And I could see Bob taking up something like this. So who knows? I definitely think that this is where your conversation needs to go one day, Carrie. Is we got to get some congressional members fired up about this issue, because it really is a readiness issue. And I will tell you that there are some people who are working on the military side with pets. And I will do all I can on my end, even though I'm not doing things directly with military and pets as much anymore. But I will use my podcast in ways that I can to help you further your cause. So how can people find you?
So obviously our website is it's islandpetmovers.com. We're on Facebook, and we post some stuff on Facebook. We're not super as active on Facebook anymore as we used to be. It's just quite time consuming. But everything, all of our documentation, everything is always going to be in writing. So for anybody that wants a quote, you can reach out to us on the website and request a quote. The quotes are free. We're actually getting like express quotes going here relatively soon, so you don't have to wait for a quote anymore. So we're definitely around, and it's been really great. It's been a long, road to where we are today, and it's stressful some days. After our last Guam charter that we had, I wanted to just sit down and like almost cry. It was just a really stressful day. We moved 78 animals in one day. But when we get the emails from our clients and we get the pictures and them saying, hey man, like we really, really appreciate you and we're really grateful and thankful for what it is that you do, it makes those long days worth it. And again, it's not just me. I mean, my staff, they genuinely care about what it is that we're doing. And, and they work really hard to make sure that everything runs as smooth as it can.
That's awesome. I love it. I love what you're doing. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Teresa, for having me again. And congratulations, almost a year. That's amazing.
I know. I'm just so happy that this has gone on for as long as it has. And I can't really see myself stopping it. I just love having these conversations and the opportunity to bring people like yourself forward and into a bigger audience, hopefully. So thank you all for watching. Don't know when I'll have another one. I usually try to do these once a week, but my schedule is a little crazy. But definitely please try to catch another one of these. And thank you all for watching. And I'll talk to you all later. Have a great night.
Aloha. Have a good day.